From the East and the West, you've heard others, but now you've tuned into the best. This is a Prime Wave Media production, the NFL Bet Exchange, hosted by my man, Pop DiBiase, the primetime capper, and the Don of Cape Cod, Jeff Dawson.
All right, it is that time for the NFL Bet Exchange with your host, the one and only Pop DiBiase, the primetime capper. We're out here in beautiful, sunny Los Angeles via Pasadena, California, and none other than himself, that man, that dude. He's been doing this for, he's been doing it for a moment now. He's been doing it for a while. Some of you kids that, think that you the whiz kids of sports betting, he could be your daddy. You know that. So it is what it is. It's the Don of Cape Cod himself, Mr. Jeff Dawson. How you doing today, sir?
Well, let's say I took Noah's Ark into the studio today. I haven't remembered a summer of slop. It's not just rain, sprinkles, it's deluges. And, the last full week of August as we speak, Labor Day next weekend, and then everyone flies to Coop, and we can rest and relax and get ready for hurricane season here. But we're ready, Pops. We're ready.
All right. So let's go ahead and jump into it, Jeff. First team that we have up is going to be these guys, the Houston Texans. And you know what? I'm always blabbing off my mouth first. I'm going to let you kick this one off. But this team was 13-1, and it looked like they were going to be the team with the number one pick in the draft. But you know what? Lovie Smith decided to say, you know what? I'm not gonna go out as a loser, bro. I'm about to win this game. I don't care. I'm getting fired at the end of the night anyway. So who cares? You know what I mean? Let's go win the game. And that's exactly what they did. And now they had to pick the second, but they made a historic moment, and they went and got the third pick as well too. And a lot of people really are kind of confused about how that worked. Anderson was always the pick. CJ Stroud was the luxury. You know what I mean? And if they weren't able to make that deal happen with the Cardinals, they weren't going to pick CJ Stroud. They always were going to get Anderson. But go ahead, Jeff. Just give us your analyst on what's going on with the Houston Texans this year. And from what I have here, they are a team that has an over/under of 6, and their odds to win the division is 7-1. So what are your thoughts on them?
It's a division that when we put a team on top that's supposed to win the division, that never does. Last year was the Colts. This year's the Jaguars. Obviously, 2 picks in the top 4. A rebuilding year, but I like the direction they're going. Running back with Pierce, and obviously the Rook quarterback, wide receiving core. I'm high on Nathaniel Dell, Tank, as I like to call him. He's had a great camp. Nico Collins, I've had since diapers, waiting. I've kind of veered to the right to Dell. I'm staying away from Collins. A defense that's going to give up a lot of points. Again, 3-13-1 last year. Don't have high hopes, but I like the direction they're going. How's that? I think they're going to be in a lot of high-scoring affairs. Will they finish last in this division? Yeah, most likely. I do think they will. But a promise, go back to the glory days with Watt and a few other big defensive players from USC. They built from the defense, and then offensively, Deshaun Watson, D-Hop. They're moving in that direction, Pops. Willie Anderson this year. They're going to be picking close from the front again next year. Don't have high hopes this year, but I like the direction they're going. How's that, Pops?
All right. Well, that's something that we can all agree upon, that they are going in the right direction and everything this year. And pretty much, you have a team that is, right now they're back to square one. It's almost like 2002 all over again when they came into the NFL. They're really building a brand new team here. They went and got 2 pillars of a franchise. You go get a franchise quarterback. And now it used to be the middle linebacker for the defensive side. That would be your captain of the defense. Now it's turned into the edge rusher, who's now your pinnacle of the defense. I wouldn't say they're going to be your leader of the defense, but they're your leader by example for the defense. Because usually if you have a great pass rusher, everybody else's life on defense is really easy. But if you have a great middle linebacker, everybody does their job accordingly. And that's one thing about this Houston team that you get a little excited about, because their head coach, guess what, was one of the better middle linebackers when he played in the NFL. And he was the middle linebacker for this defense that was a top 10 defense year in and year out when he was a part of that group. D'Amico Ryans is a defensive genius, and we all know that. But we all are asking the question, is it too soon that he's a head coach now? And I look at this team and I say to myself that you have a lot of really good players on this roster that are young and upcoming. And do they have the dog in them, as we all like to say? You know what I mean? Do you have the dog in you? And I think that it will come down to this team being better as the season goes along. Like December, they'll be a much better team than they are in September. Okay. And I think that this team is very, very, they can be experimental this year. You know what I mean? And they don't have to rely on CJ Stroud carrying the offense. If I was going in here as the head coach of this team, I would want to more establish a running game, something that's going to make it really easy on our quarterback, because I feel like CJ Stroud is not a guy that can handle pressure. I feel like when the pressure really gets to the top level, he's not a guy that you can really trust. And the examples are all on the wall. And we can say this: Michigan's probably the closest thing in the Big Ten to NFL defense. And the way that he looked against Michigan both years, it goes to show you this might be his NFL career too. So that's where it's like we might have went a little bit over the top for a guy like CJ Stroud, because CJ Stroud might have the Gino Torretta syndrome, where you have a bunch of talented players with you and you just were fortunate. But he's a talented player. He's really good at what he does. But the entitlement part, I was with him during draft week, and I said that I wouldn't draft the guy, because I feel like he's being entitled to the league, entitled to the position. He thinks he's already going to be a Hall of Famer. It doesn't work like that. I'm not saying he's not putting in the work. I'm not saying that he's doing this, but you're thinking a little bit too ahead of yourself instead of just learning the process. And that's something that you can't be like with a team like the Texans, in my opinion. The Texans, you have to mature and you have to really learn the position. You really have to learn the league.
I'm smiling and laughing because this is making too much sense. If you go back to Joe Burrow and his first year, and everyone knows that they needed their offensive line was putrid, and they needed the left tackle, and there was the kid from Oregon, I think it was, and they took Jamar Chase. This writing's on the wall. Houston, I'm not saying they're going to tank, but they're going to be bad. They're not going to need a quarterback. And who's going to be sitting there when they're drafting in one of the top picks, but Marvin Harrison Jr. So instead of fixing the defense or the left or right tackle, there he's going to have his hookup right there. So just keep this bookmarked. So when the draft comes and you see the Houston Texans first pick next year, Marvin Harrison Jr. So he now has the hookup. So Burrow to Chase will now be Stroud to Harrison Jr.
Well, hey, thing is, though, Joe Burrow, kind of was able to be fortunate enough to get hurt during that season as well, too. And Cincinnati had no expectations. So it does sound similar, but I just don't know. I just feel like Joe Burrow is a little bit of a different type of animal. You know what I mean?
No doubt.
I think Joe Burrow is a little bit more into the football aspect of things, not the fame aspect of things, not being the talk of ESPN and the talk of FS1. The guy wants to win championships and things of that nature. Right now, CJ Stroud just is worried about how big his chain is going to be. That's what he's worried about. You know what I mean? these guys, it was funny because we got to draft week. These guys had so many bills. They didn't even know that I knew that. I said, damn, these guys got a lot of bills before they sign as soon as they sign their contract, because all this stuff is on credit. And, sometimes it's not on your credit card. It's on the agent's credit card. So he's going to be taking out that portion of your check once, we get to, because he gets to see your money before you do. You know what I mean? So it is what it is at the end of the day. But I will have my answer for the Texans when we next week, when we do break out our overs and unders and our division winners for the for this upcoming season. So let's switch it up and move on to the Indy Colts. The Colts are a team with a lot of questions right now, and they are a team that has a lot of different elements going into the season. They have a running quarterback that is seen as a guy that can be maybe the next Cam Newton, because he can run and throw, and he's big, and he can do a lot of special things out there on the football field. Now, what does he have behind him? Jonathan Taylor is already a disgruntled running back who wants out and wants to get to a greener pasture, in a sense, because he knows that he's not going to get paid. And Irsay has already pretty much, confirmed that he's not going to pay him. And you know what the saddest part about this is, too, Jeff? He wears number 28. And let's just know that he did the same thing to Marshall Faulk, an NFL Hall of Famer, Super Bowl winning running back, who probably would have been able to get you a Super Bowl a lot earlier in Peyton's career if you would have just paid him. You know what I mean? And it's good that they established that he wasn't going to get paid now, because now they know exactly what to do. But I feel like Jonathan Taylor being a distraction at this time is the worst possible time to do, Jeff. I'm sorry, because they were about you're the face of the franchise. You're already getting paid good money as is, and you have a quarterback coming in that's going to make you look really, really good next season, because he can, make like they can be a deceptive duo with the RPO and everything like that. But when it comes down to it, this team finished 4-12 last year, and they had a good point of the season where they were like 4-2 at one point, Jeff, and then they dropped 10 in a row.
Yep.
And that's what was wrong with this Colts team. They really fooled all of us, because we had this Colts team. Most people had this Colts team winning the South last year, because they had Matt Ryan, and they have Michael Pittman Jr., and they have Jonathan Taylor. They had guys that were seen as some of the best playmakers in the division. So how do you lose the division? Well, your team literally was a mash unit, because your defense, most of those guys got hurt. And the crazy thing about this is, too, Jeff, the Colts had the leading tackler in the NFL. I know, because I interviewed him during Super Bowl week, Zaire Franklin. So they have players. They have people in place. And it's not going to be as bad as a lot of people think it's going to be in Indianapolis. And when you look at this team, you see that, okay, they have an over-under of 6.5 wins this year. Their championship odds are 5-1. Now, I know that it sounds crazy today, but this team could be a dark horse to win the division. They got a brand new coach. They got a brand new philosophy, and they got themselves a young quarterback that can move. But that doesn't mean anything until we start the season. But I'm just saying, the way that the roster's been built to where they can actually still run the table in this division. This division is not a difficult division when you look at it, when you really look at it at the end of the day. I know Jacksonville is getting a lot of love because Trevor Lawrence and coming back and going on that run that they did to finish up the season and everything last year. But people have to understand, it's about this year. It's not about what happened the last 8 weeks of last season. It's about what's going on this year. And it seems like every time they overhype a team in the AFC South, they really do shoot themselves in the foot. What are your thoughts on the Colts moving forward for this year? Do you think this team has any type of possibility of winning this division? Because that 5-1 is a good look at it's some value, in my opinion. And if you look at it in the sense of we're in a wide open division, you could take that to the bank because the over 6.5 is very doable, in my opinion. So what are your thoughts, Jeff?
We anointed them last year. They were the team to beat, and then again, good start, and then just faded off into the sunset. Had quarterback problems, and then it was just like quicksand. And this year, there's a lot of turmoil, meaning with the Jonathan Taylor. They gave him till Tuesday to find a home. They already rejected the first Miami offer. They're sitting in the catbird seat because they know Miami wants them. The Eagles are knocking on the door as well. A couple other, teams in the back seat, like the Bears, for instance. But my point is, it's preseason, and Anthony Richardson can't hit a broadside of the barn. He is so raw. He's hitting less than 50% in the preseason. He's just, listen, I always go back to this. Why? Because it worked. When Andy Reid and the Chiefs moved up to draft Patrick Mahomes, and before Patrick Mahomes became Patrick Mahomes, they handed him the clipboard. And they said, son, you see that quarterback over there? His name is Alex Smith. He is our quarterback this year. You take all the notes possible. He is your mentor. Next year, you're going to start. And that's what Anthony needs here. And so many times you force these kids in to first-year situations, and they're not ready, and some get ruined. Just look at the Jets. Zach Wilson was ruined after year one. Now you add the Jonathan Taylor. I'm not saying Anthony Richardson is not going to be a good quarterback. He's not going to be a good quarterback this year. He could run for 1,000-yard pops, but he just, when he needs to make those completions and move the chains, if it's not with his legs, he's not going to make that completion. So it's a division where, yes, Jacksonville is the team to beat. They have probably the best coach in the division with Mr. Peterson, even though I'm a big Vrabel fan. Okay, so I think the 6.5 is high, especially with no Taylor. He's not going to be there this year. So whether he comes back without a trade on Tuesday and he sits out, I don't know. But again, Michael Pittman on the outside, good wide receiver. Defense is good. Offensive line's good. I just don't think they're ready. I would currently bet the under 6.5, but I'm rooting for him, Pops.
Hey, and you know what, Jeff? I'm not signed up for the over 6.5 here. Okay. I just thought that, we could probably put the Texans at, well, they're at 5.5 at some books as well, too. But the Texans being at 6, that's a little bit much. So when I see the Colts at 6.5, I'm going to say 7-10 might be doable for this team. Because once again, the Colts will probably be a team that will be much better later as they grow and as they process. But this is, like I told Mike last night on his show, on the Mike Abadir show that I'm a co-host for. You guys can catch that every Thursday at 4 p.m. Pacific time, 7 p.m. Jeff's time, Eastern on Voice of America. So if you guys want to ever catch that, and you can call in as well too. So what I was saying last night, and it was at the end of the show, so he had to interrupt me. So I said this: Houston Texans, they got a rookie quarterback who has a big ego. Colts, they have a rookie quarterback that's a project. Okay, Jacksonville has the number 1 pick in the draft from a few years ago, the Golden Boy, Trevor Lawrence. And then you look at the Titans and you say, who the hell do they have? They have an over-the-hill quarterback and 2 young quarterbacks. So they are in a quarterback controversy somewhat. You know what I mean? So when I look at it and you see that we don't have a dominant quarterback because we can't call Trevor Lawrence a dominant quarterback until we see him have a full 17-game season where he actually dominates at least 80% of that season. Because I felt like schedule and timing really played a part in them making the playoffs last year, because they were one of the worst teams in the NFL before that Raiders game. And they just turned it on. So that's why the only reason why I'm giving the Colts somewhat of an inkling of an opportunity is because I feel like the division is just too wide open at this point, and that these divisional games are not going to be walks in the park for anybody. And especially when you got to go to Indianapolis and go play in the old RCA Dome, you're going to have to hear that crowd. And they're going to be quiet confident this year. And that's why, they don't have real expectations. So sometimes when a team like the Colts, who don't have real expectations, these are the teams that sneak up on you, and they're the ones that cover for you as well too.
No, I agree. Who's Richardson's backup?
Your boy, Uncle Rico himself, Minshew.
Correct. They have a better opportunity to win this year, not to progress, not to get ready for year two, like when I talked about Stroud and Harrison next year. Okay. My point here is their only problem last year was quarterback. A couple of years ago it was Rivers. Then would they get Matt Ryan? Matt Ryan couldn't throw me to you 20 yards without a hook and lateral. He was just that bad. And now Anthony's going to bring excitement. He's going to sell tickets. He's going to put fannies in the seats. He's going to, we talk about Jalen Hurts 2 years ago. Take the snap, first look, covered, put the ball down and run. That's what Anthony's going to do. And again, I get it. But are you going to kill him like Zach Wilson because he's that raw? He only had a handful of games in Florida. He's built like a brick. You know what? He's Cam Newton on steroids. And I'm not even going to put the pressure on him to say he's going to be the next Cam Newton. He has all the possibilities. Cam Newton won a national title. Cam Newton went to a Super Bowl. Cam Newton won an MVP. Those are big shoes to fill. He's just not ready right now for that. It's proven in the preseason, and it's only preseason. The bright lights are going to come on. The expectation is going to be there in the RCA Dome. Going to take that first snap. Pittman's covered. He's going to put the ball down, and he's going to run for 45 yards, and everyone's going to applaud. Well, what are they going to do when he starts the season 1-5? Do they want Gardner Minshew, or do they want to see the progressions? That's what we're looking for, progressions. Add to Jonathan Taylor. They need to get that deal done. Get him out of camp. Gone. Get your prospects, get your draft picks, and move on. Don't hold Taylor and the movement, as you like to say, the movement, hostage. Get it done, get it over with. If you can't get the first, get a couple seconds. Just get it done and over with. Rip the Band-Aid off. And this is the bed that you made. You're going to have to sleep in it.
Hey, I totally agree. And you know what? I just truly feel that this is a move that they're making because this is up top. This is up top confirming they want Richardson starting. This isn't, and the head coach going along with it because he's a robot. So pretty much, he has to prove himself. Richardson has to prove himself. They're all putting themselves in a bad position right now. And we know that that's going to be something that they'll be talking about a lot during the next few weeks. But they want to do this so the fans can have something to be excited about. This is all about selling seats, man. And you know that, Jeff. So pretty much let's move forward because we did talk about them a little bit longer than I think we need to talk about the Colts. But, hey, there's a lot of questions with this team. Now let's talk about the perennial favorite here, and that's going to be Jacksonville. Jacksonville is coming in here with a record last year where they finished 9-8. And that was because they were able to pretty much win the last, I think it was the last 8 out of 11 games of the season to go ahead. And because at one point they were 1-6. And then they went ahead and they closed out the season as the division champions, and they had everybody excited because they won a lot of home games in the crunch. You know what I mean? They showed the cardiac kid mantra, and a lot of people fell in love with that about this Jacksonville team. So now Jacksonville next season is coming in as a somewhat big favorite because right now they probably do have the biggest number, even bigger than the Eagles right now, on who's going to win their division, minus 275. Jeff, I'll let you go ahead and kick it off about your thoughts on the Jaguars and what to expect from that team this season.
Well, you said it best. They end the year, I think it was 8-2, and they finished 9-8. Okay. And I just thinking, and I'm smiling because I go back to the Dallas game where they lost. The game was over, and Dallas just gift wrapped that game to him. Dak gift wraps the game with the fumble, then the pick six to end the game. They would have ended the season just there alone, 8-9. Now they're under overs 9.5 with a minus 275. In fantasy world, I mean, there's no one rising up the charts more than Calvin Ridley right now, who hasn't played in a year and a half. When he last played at Atlanta, he couldn't catch a ball if it had a handle on it, okay? Now he gets suspended for gambling for 1 year, and now he's on the Jaguars, and he's the next coming to Jimmy Smith. And so I would just tell everyone to pump the brakes on this one here. But you got probably the best coach in the division with Mr. Peterson. You got a quarterback who was he was thought to be a generational pick with the John Elways, the Peyton Mannings, the Andrew Lucks, and now Trevor Lawrence. You got a backfield of ETN. They draft Tank Bigsby, who's looking great. So you got a wide receiving core of Calvin Ridley, Christian Kirk, a tight end of Evan Ingram, who looked awesome as well, a defense that's getting better. So the price tag is too steep. The under-over is too steep. It's just that the division itself, there's so many question marks. Will they win the division? Yeah, probably they will. Is it worth minus 275? Hell no, it's not. I would take a swing with the Tennessee Titans, with an aging quarterback, with an aging running back, with a coach that I think is on the same level as Doug Peterson, and that's Mr. Vrabel, who we're going to get to next. But again, as our way back in the day was it, don't believe the hype. So I would just pump the brakes and slow down, but I'm not paying that price, Pops.
Hey, you know what? And that's funny you say that, Jeff, because look, it was about 6 months ago, I think. Not even 6 months ago. It was like 2 weeks after the season, maybe whenever they dropped the futures for who can win the divisions, right? And a guy walks into the casino, and I think he put up his whole life savings of like not $1 million, but some thousands, you know. And he said, "This is free money, guys. You got to take it. Here goes the free money right here." They were minus 180. And I said that minus 180, dude, you're not even going to get a plus, and you're finna put up your whole savings on this situation. And literally, we're not even to the season yet. And you're telling me it's free money. Nobody has snapped their Achilles yet. Nobody has broke an ankle yet. So they are for sure going to do this thing. Even if, Trevor Lawrence has a season-ending concussion. You know what I mean? Like, are they going to? No, they're not going to be able to do nothing if Trevor Lawrence is hurt. They don't have a backup quarterback, okay? And when you don't have a serviceable backup, you can't have these type of expectations. I'm sorry. You just can't. Because the reason why certain teams get loved the way that they do, I don't really care for the Chiefs that much. But when I put on my reporter hat and my even keel hat, I know that they're the best of the best. They got the best coach. They got the best quarterback. But one thing about the Chiefs that nobody ever says, if Mahomes gets hurt, they have a capable backup because the system. That backup can't be there if he can't run that system. It's not somebody who can just come in and fill in and for a quarter or two. It's a person who can actually take over the team. That's the difference. And Jacksonville has their self set up to be dependent only on Trevor Lawrence as their quarterback. And when you bring in the next guy, if something happens to him, it's going to throw off the rhythm of what this team has to do. Calvin Ridley is a guy who's been off for a year. Yeah, guys are always going to look great at practice, but he's been off for a year. He has to get back with the actual conditioning and the actual, physicality of the game. The guy hasn't played since 2021. So he has to get back to that portion of the game. Yeah, everything seems really good at practice because we're going half speed. So, when we get in the game, that's something different. And just like you said, Jeff, people getting excited about Calvin Ridley fantasy team, all that. I had him on my fantasy team last time he played. He sucked. He was terrible. He had a horrible season. And I picked him first. That's how I remember I had Calvin Ridley. So calm down. That's the whole thing. Kirk is the best receiver on the team. Okay. And everybody who watches football knows that. So if you can keep Christian Kirk healthy, if you can keep Ingram healthy, if Ridley can go ahead and play like the guy he was when he was in college, then yes, Jacksonville should breeze past this division. But they still have to deal with Tennessee. They still have to deal with Houston team when they go to Houston. They still got to deal with Indianapolis. Then they have to play a first place schedule this year as well, too. It's not going to be a walk in the park. And this has turned into a division where you don't have to have a winning record to win the division. So my thing is like this. All these teams are fairly similar in a sense, but the advantage does go to Jacksonville for teams in this division because they, just like you keep saying, is that they have the coach that's won a Super Bowl. And they have the quarterback that's seen as the golden child. So they have a lot of things working for them moving forward that says that this team is ascending to that level of being one of the top 5 teams in the AFC. And it makes total sense. But it's going to be a game-by-game situation.
No, again, what is it? 6 teams? 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 teams that made the playoffs last year aren't going to make the playoffs. 4 teams that didn't make the playoffs are going to make the playoffs. We're not saying this team isn't talented, okay? We're not saying that. We're not saying all the pieces are in place, okay? The fact of the matter, as you just said, what happens if something happens to Trevor Lawrence, okay? What happens if something happens to someone else? Everything's predicated on Trevor Lawrence making the next step. He did at the end of last year. And if he keeps going, this team's going to be a juggernaut. This team might win 11, 12, 13 games. I don't know. You don't know. No one knows. Okay? But you're paying a high tax already on something that you haven't seen yet. That's the whole thing. We want to be the guys holding the golden ticket saying, I told you so. That was easy money, Pops. It's only juice. If they lose, who cares what the juice is? Okay, well, tell me that in week 3 when, so-and-so just got carted off and you're just sitting there saying, oh, my God. Never mind, they're holding your money for 17 weeks, too. So just be careful.
Right.
That's all.
Right. That's the same thing I'm saying. Just tread lightly because they're not an absolute winner in this division. You know what I mean? They're not an absolute. Now, let's talk about a team that was pretty much the constant, consistent in this conference over the last decade, in this division over the last decade. And that's going to be none other than the Tennessee Titans. The Tennessee Titans finished 7-10 last year, but this might be the worst 7-10 that you'll ever see in your life. The team was 6-2, wound up going 1-8 by the time the season ended. They were actually the number 1 team in the AFC before their losing streak started. And that's just, the quarterback got hurt. He wasn't healthy. They had a rookie quarterback that pretty much was a guy that was still needs time to learn the position and learn the job. And then they also had a running back that wasn't 100% all the way. The focal point of their team was not 100% last season. And Derrick Henry. And then we all know that they do lack wide receiver. Traylon Burks is a great receiver, but after that, can you name their receivers? You know what I mean? Like that's probably the one team in the NFL you can't even name their receivers. That's how much you don't know who they are. So, Tennessee is a team that you can't just throw away. You can't just say Tennessee, oh yeah, well, they didn't have a great season last year. They finished 7-10, so yeah, it's going to be tough. I was like, well, this team might have the most options out of everybody. You got a quarterback in Tannehill who probably would be seen as the best quarterback in the division if you could trust him. But you know what? When it comes down to winning, he's the most winning one. So you have that as an advantage to you. And then I have to agree with Jeff. Peterson went to a Super Bowl. Good for him. But he went there because that was a great team. And that was a great situation. That was a great overall group. You had great coaches. You had great players. Everything was the perfect storm. In Jacksonville, he's had to build this thing up, and it's making him look really good. But when it comes down to the actual coaches, and you can coach up anything and they can win, it's variable all day, every day. He's been doing this, and he learned that from Bill Belichick. I just got to have guys that are willing to go out there and do whatever it takes to win the game. And that's why Tennessee still presents the element that they're the team in this division. I don't care what anybody says. They got the best player in the division, Derrick Henry. And when we really look at it, pound for pound, they probably have the best defense in this group as well, too, because they got a lot of high-paid players on that side of the ball. That's literally most of their cap is going to their top-end defensive players. And then Malik Willis presents a guy that can run a little bit, so you can use him in little gadget plays, little gimmick plays. Will Levis will probably be the only one that has to really learn on the job and have to be a backup, have the clipboard in his hand. But from what they said about him, he's decent too. So they have options in that area. So when I look at the fact that they have this team set up at this is not what they're set up at, not over 9.5, but what you call it, they're at 8.5. Sorry about that, but I can switch that in a second. But the championship odds are 275. I think that's where you play at. That's where your value lies at, is in the 275. I'm not picking them yet to win the division because I still got to get through this final week of preseason, who's going to get cut and all that good stuff and who's getting traded. But I think that Tennessee, when you look at who Tennessee truly is, they're a team that still has the landlord cap of the South. It doesn't matter what the Jacksonville Jaguars did. They just got here. Tennessee's been doing it. And yeah, they had a little bit of a fall off because they had a lot of injuries. But I think, though, at the end of the day, Tennessee is still the toughest team in this division. And that plus 275 is a good looking number. Your thoughts?
You got apples and oranges. Okay, we talked about a Jacksonville team that ended the season 8-2 or something like that, and Tennessee, the exact opposite. You got a team with Jacksonville that's ascending, young quarterback, generational, Calvin Ridley, weapons galore, Zay Jones, Christian Kirk. You got a backfield of ETN and Tank Bigsby. Now, what do you got in Tennessee? You got an aging quarterback with Tannehill. You got an aging running back with Derrick Henry, though they did draft Mr. Spears, who's looked great as well as his backup. But my point is, Treylon Burks, who was the reason why they traded A.J. Brown, got hurt in the preseason, is going to be out a few weeks. There's nothing but negativity going on from the outside looking in. But you go to the heart of this team, and the heart of the and soul of this team is Vrabel and Henry. And then they need a quarterback, a veteran quarterback of Tannehill, not to make mistakes, not to throw 4 and 5 turnovers a game. Can this team win the division? Yeah, maybe. They would need the perfect storm. They would need to win the turnover battle. They will need Derrick Henry to stay healthy. They have a tight end who, I'm going to screw up his name, Okanowo, good tight end, ascending upwards. Okay, they need a lot of help here, but at the plus 275, I'm running to the window to play a plus 275 before I'm walking to a window to play a minus 275 pops.
Yeah, and when it comes down to it, this division, man, is just so tough, Jeff. And that's what I keep trying to get people to understand, that we're going to have a war here in the South. You know what I mean? And people have to just understand that it's going to be real. You know what I mean? And it's going to be tough. It's not going to be easy game. So when you see the Texans playing against the Jaguars in Jacksonville, and they're coming off a 30-point loss, that's the week that you got to take them. I know it sounds crazy, But hey, that's the week where everybody and their mama gonna say, "Oh, you know, man, Jacksonville's gonna romp them." I would never trust Jacksonville with a 9.5 point minus spread. I'm not gonna trust them with a 10-point spread because they're not they're not that type of team. And you have to understand when certain teams get over audit, you know what I mean, as I want to say, or overlooked or underlooked, something of that nature. When you have a team that they put too much confidence in that isn't elite yet, that usually means that you need to go the other way because that team's about to get worked. So we'll see. And we have a lot of great things that we have to talk about when it comes to the NFC side, because like I said, I knew that the South was going to be a very spirited talk because where are we going in the South? That's the biggest question that we do have. So with this, we're going to take our first commercial break. And when I get back, we're going to go ahead